Welcome to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and I am thrilled to have another wonderful guest on today's episode. So please join me in welcoming Mohammed Joyo to Heartistry.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. Well, Mohammed, it's wonderful to meet you. We are going to get into so many things, and yeah, it's we heard a little bit about you in our introduction, and I so want to jump right into the business side of what you do, and yet I'm going to refrain. What I really do love about these conversations is they're not quick, they're not short, they're not meant to be soundbitey, and it really just gives us a chance to have some context and backstory about you and who you are. And so, ultimately, what I'd love to ask you first and foremost is about you and your origin story. Anything you'd like to share about your personal family history, and eventually we will get to the present.
Yeah, I've had a origin stories, and people always ask me like, "Hey, where are you from, or what? Where do you like, what part of the U.S. are you from, or whatnot?" It's complicated, Like I don't really have a hometown. It feels like I've kind of
Mm.
moved around my whole life. Um, I was born in Karachi. My dad was in like, worked in the government, so that kind of meant we were moving around like all the time.
Got it.
So, we
Within
went from,
Pakistan.
yeah, even within
Okay.
Pakistan, we'd go from
Mm.
like Karachi to Islamabad and back to Karachi.
Yeah.
And then, we ended up moving to the US for, my dad got a posting in New York City.
Okay.
Um, so we were living in New York for a while, about like 5 or 6 years. And even there, we like kind of moved around as we kind of like found, a place to settle down. And then at that point, my dad, ended up going back to Pakistan. They called him back. And
Okay.
so we were trying to stay here, and my mom got a job in Southern California. So then we were in SoCal for like another 5 or 6 years. Again, like,
Oh,
new space. We're like trying to
yeah.
settle again, so moved around a lot. Um, and then, I ended up going to college at NYU. So then I was there for a while, went back to New York.
Mm.
In the meantime, my mom and my family moved to the Bay Area.
Ah,
And after I graduated, I ended up like I ended up getting a job in the Bay Area as well at the same company as my mom. Um,
was that at
and
Google, perhaps?
yeah, it was at
A little
Google.
thing called Google. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. She forced me to apply. I really didn't want to. I didn't think I would get in. She took my resume and submitted it without asking me. Um, so things worked out, and I ended up like moving to the Bay Area, and then like our little family got reunited again.
Mm.
Um, and then like I moved to the Bay Area, and then we settled down in the East Bay. And then I made some friends, ended up meeting my wife through them, and
Okay.
I've been married for like the past uh 3 to 4 years now. I say that because, we had a COVID wedding, so it was like,
Ah,
we're getting
time
married
lapse
for
of
like the whole,
sorts.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's kind of the origin story. Meanwhile, like my dad has been kind of coming back and forth from
Okay.
Pakistan, so he'll be there for most of the time, and he'd spend like a month here with us, and then the rest of the time he's there, which will kind of play later into like the origin story of Elaichi. Um,
Amazing. And
yeah.
do you go to Pakistan at all or often? And
Yeah, I go honestly pretty often. I love going back to Pakistan. Like, Um, you know, I mean, I'm very like honestly, I don't think I could live there for like an extended period of time. It's just, I think I've just gotten too used to the comforts here, and I mean, not to say I couldn't if I had to,
yeah.
but um, I love going back to visit. I love seeing my family back home. I love kind of, exploring. I think my dad did a good job of like whenever we went back, he would take us out to explore different parts of
Oh,
Pakistan.
nice.
We went like explored like interior Sindh, the Thar Desert. We went to visit Lahore and like Peshawar, and went up to like Gilgit-Baltistan and Murray and like all that like and Kashmir, all that fun stuff
Mm.
that most
Okay.
people like, most people just go home to Pakistan and they're just like
Sure.
at people's houses and I think I really got to explore and experience the culture. And so I love going back. We were just there in December for a few weddings, like Zainab, my wife's family, Zainab's family was getting married, cousins getting married, my cousin was getting married, so we made a trip out of it. But it was fun. It was great.
Beautiful. Let's go ahead. We'll take our first pause right here. Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and today we are speaking with Mohammed Joyo. And we heard a little bit about your background, and yeah, that is quite a bit of moving around, as you said. And I'm curious, when you first came to the US, how old were you?
I was 9 years old.
Okay, so that
Yeah,
was a pretty significant amount of your childhood
yeah.
to grow up in Pakistan. Again, albeit you were moving around even within Pakistan. But what was that like? I know you were on the East Coast, eventually here on the West Coast. Um, yeah, was that culture shock? Were you able to kind of acclimate relatively quickly?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, initially it definitely took some time. It was a long time ago now, so like,
Mhm.
it doesn't feel as much, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know for sure I had like, a Fab accent, that somehow I managed to get rid of, but, um, I think it took some time for sure. Like, first day at school was all like,
Yeah.
kind of scary because I'd watch TV and movies on like what school's like in the US. So it's kind of
Right.
familiar, but it was just like a big space. Like school in Pakistan is very different.
Yeah.
Different people. I'm very different, and so
Hmm.
it took some time. I found like eventually, like I think my school did a good job of like they assigned me a buddy, which, I would like bother all the time and eventually found like a group of friends. And then um, I think, uh, I think I had kind of gotten used to all the moving
Hmm.
around. And even in the US, we moved around a lot, right? In Pakistan, we moved around a lot. And so, I moved schools 3 times while we were in New York.
Hmm.
And so like every time like had to make a new set of friends and find a new community. And
Yeah.
I think I got really good at just kind of adapting to different situations and new situations just because, that's what I had to do. Being able
Yeah.
to like find people with similar interests or make new friends. And I mean, it always takes
Totally.
time, but I kind of learned to accept that things like kind of keep changing and you gotta, stay flexible and just keep moving.
Absolutely. No, it makes perfect sense. And there is something to be said about, developing the skill of adaptability,
Hmm.
however challenging it can be. So, I asked you some questions even prior to this conversation, and something that came up a couple of times in response to different questions is your inclination, your desire to really take on learning new skills.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, and where did you even realize this tendency of yours? What are some of the things that you've taken on? I think eventually that's going to lead us again to the
Yeah.
business, but just curious to know how it showed up for you even sooner than more recent years.
Yeah. I think I really kind of understood this inclination like during COVID.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people had like COVID hobbies and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I was definitely one of them. Um, but even, as far back as like, my childhood, I remember my mom spending a lot of time with me. Like we would paint and, I'd have a blast. And we would do like little circuit diagrams connecting wires and light bulbs and batteries and stuff.
Huh.
And, that was, also great. I love doing that. I love sewing as a kid. My grandma would teach me how to like sew and stuff like that. And she would make, my grandma would make, she would make recipes out of like dried date seeds.
Oh, very
And
cool.
so that was like my favorite thing to do with her.
Okay.
And so I think these little crafts have been kind of part of my upbringing.
Mm,
And I really, really, enjoyed them, and I love getting my like kind of get I love getting my hands dirty.
mm.
Um, and then, through COVID, I kind of, picked up a few hobbies. I was like, baking sourdough for a while, as the rest of the world was. And I got into like Neapolitan pizza, and then I was like fixing my car and like, working on it myself, and then woodworking, and then, even jewelry making. Like I made Zainab's like engagement ring.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so I get really obsessed over like different crafts and get really interested, and then I'll just kind of, you know, uh, deep dive into it, learn as much as I can, and everyone gets mad because they're like, you're just gonna start this, and then 2 months later you're gonna forget all about it.
I was wondering, do you
And
just keep adding to the list, or so you do sort of, you get, for a lack of a better phrase, you get your fill and then you do
yeah.
something else sort of takes over.
Yeah,
Okay.
I tend to rabbit hole and then just like,
Yeah.
keep going and then learn everything I can. And then at some point I get bored and I move on to something different. And
Got
that
it.
that just keeps me excited and engaged. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'm going to rewind a little bit. And again, we heard a little bit about this even in your intro, but you mentioned you moved to the Bay eventually and you
Mhm.
started working at Google. Uh, what were you doing there? How long did that last? Because I'm pretty certain you're not there anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us a little bit about that time. What what essentially led to your desire to leave that position?
Yeah, I think I was at Google for about 5 years, maybe a little bit
Mhm.
more. Just over 5 years, I think.
Mm.
I was a software engineer, just like the rest of the Bay Area. Um, so yeah, I mean, Google was definitely like one of those like dream companies. I honestly did not think I had a shot at, I thought I was gonna work at some random no-name company.
Mm.
And I didn't really have very good experience coming out of college and all these things, but I don't know, like my mom did something. She was at Google at the time, so she like referred me and then was able to connect me with people to help me and stuff like that.
Amazing.
That definitely helped a lot. But um, yeah, it was just a miracle. But my time at Google was definitely like very, very eye-opening. I kind of saw this company, this culture. Um, I saw people that just loved being there. I saw people
Mm.
that were like um, uh, intellectually like challenged all the time, and like they're I was surrounded by people that were like 10 times smarter than me. And yeah, it was just like a very like I definitely like I tell everyone like I learned the most I've ever have in my life my first 2 months at Google.
Mm.
And it was just an amazing experience. I saw like that like when I was there, I was like, okay, this is how a company should be run. Um,
Mm.
People that are valued, people that feel good, people that like coming into work and they enjoy what they do. And
Mm.
uh, yeah, it was awesome. I ended up moving on from it. I was there for 5 years, which is,
That's
like
significant.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
significant amount of
Yeah.
time. Um, I think like, after some time, I kind of wanted to. Google is a very big company, and it's run very efficiently, and everything is kind of set up for you and done for you, and which is really nice because you get a lot done, but
Mm.
you don't learn as much. After some
Mm.
time, definitely is like, and I wanted to learn about building things, and I wanted to get closer to the lower level and see like, how are these things that I'm using built? Like I'm just using other people's tools and all these things
Mm.
that they've created, but I don't understand the problem that they're solving. I don't understand how they work. So I want to work at a smaller company where like I can really see the inner workings and I can have a bigger impact and, having helping grow that. Um, so yeah, I think that's kind of the reason why I mainly left Google. I think my team kind of changed a lot as well and just weren't getting along as much anymore. But
Mm.
um, overall, I think the main reason was just I wanted to like it was my own intellectual curiosity that okay, I need to go explore something else now.
Again, it shows up again. So I think there's definitely some consistency there, huh?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead. We'll take our next pause here. Welcome back to Heartistry. I am in conversation today with Mohammed Joyo and, hearing a little bit about your time at Google. And so when you decided it was time to explore something different, you mentioned that the interest had been to work for a smaller company. Did you indeed actually make the move to another company, or is this when Elaichi was born?
Yeah, this is when Elaichi was born. I
Okay.
did end up also moving to another smaller company as well. So,
Okay.
kind of, exploring Elaichi at the same time. I had some time between jobs, basically.
Okay.
Um, and this is kind of the time when I got interested in Elaichi. And also, this is around the time when my dad was kind of living with us for a few years, and he was starting to think about going back to Pakistan, and we started having these serious conversations like, hey, like,
Okay.
what does it look like? What does the world look like where you stay here with us? Because we'd love to have the
Hmm.
family, like, stay together.
Yeah.
Um, and I think he's kind of also the type of person who, likes to stay busy and not really just
Mm.
kind of sit around.
Yeah.
So, and he didn't really have a career here and, was having a hard time finding something to do here. So
Yeah.
we had this
And the
conversation like,
US,
hey,
yeah, the US can be so isolating for
right.
folks if you don't have sort of an embedded
Hmm.
lifestyle that is otherwise, right? You're part of a community, a workforce, etc. So yeah, all
Yeah.
of that, his feelings are totally understandable.
Yeah, and he'd kind of, built a career in
Yeah.
Pakistan,
Right?
to a very high level that you couldn't really recreate here.
Sure.
Like to the point where he was in the room with the prime minister sometimes,
Hmm.
which like, it's hard to give that up.
Yeah.
And so like I totally understand his struggle as well. And like the things that, he's done to get us where we are today is just like parents have both sacrificed so much.
Mm.
And so I wanted to do something to kind of give back a little bit. I don't think I could ever really make up for everything they've done, but
Right.
um so that's kind of where Lychee was born. Like, hey, like, what if we started something together where we can kind of
Huh.
work on this thing and stay, work on it as a family, and explore this silly little passion that, I've had for a while.
We'll talk about that passion, sort of as a side note to
Yeah.
this. What is the passion?
That's a good question. I think, I've thought about this a lot. At first, I thought it was like, hey, I like making coffee, I like making chai, I like, I'm making drinks for people. And, as, these feelings kind of developed and we kind of got further into lychee, I kind of realized like it's less about like the drinks and more about
Mm.
like the people and the interaction. And I think the one word that it boils down to is just hospitality.
Mm.
Um, and I think that is like the true passion. I think like you have to be hyper like focused on hospitality in order to do something beautiful in the space. And I think that comes a lot from my parents having,
Mm.
grown up. And I think South Asians inherently have a really great sense of hospitality.
Yeah.
And I've seen like, my mom had this thing growing up. She would, she'd say like anytime your friends want to come over, like you don't have to tell me, you don't have to ask, just have them over. Like everyone's welcome at any time. She had an open door policy, so um, that kind of really resonated with me. It made me
Mm.
feel comfortable, made like anyone I wanted to have over feel comfortable. And she was just happy to have people over, regardless of what was going on that day, whether it was like
Yeah.
really busy or the house was a mess or like whatever. She always prioritized having people over.
I love
And,
that.
so
You
I
know,
think, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I am having a thought I'd love to share that, as you were talking earlier about when you were younger and moving around so much, I couldn't help but, and again, it may be a stretch, but now it really does seem like it's coming together. Essentially, when I think of somebody who has to move around, right, quite a bit, which has not been my reality. I've been generally in the same place for an extended period of time, and it would just be phases of my life that moved me.
Hmm.
Um, but you're not really able to embed yourself into community. Uh, and so I couldn't help but wonder, and I love that you use the word hospitality, but I'm going to ask you, was there a conscious, and if not, was there a conscious intention around building community or a place for community to gather? And or even if there wasn't, through this mechanism of intentional hospitality, do you believe that's an outcome of what you've created?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think community is essential, and we all kind of felt that during COVID.
Yeah.
We all kind of felt like the ramifications of being isolated and not having a community, not having people to um, spend time with and see and kind of bond with and meet new people. I think, we humans are social animals, and we kind of need that. I think with social media and COVID around, like both kind of peaking around the same times, like we just became really isolated. And I think that was
Mm.
also kind of a frustration. And I wanted to see if I could create a space that kind of broke that a little bit and
Mm.
encourage people to come in and be in the real world, and see eye to eye and, talk to people and,
Yeah.
strike up conversations and just be part of something bigger.
Yeah. So you were saying you were having this conversation with your father. Essentially, had you really formulated the full idea? Again, I think I had you veer off from that story
Mhm,
by
mhm.
asking you what was that passion, and you responded with the intention around hospitality. So how did those conversations transpire, and how did you land on what you did?
Yeah, I think my dad had like ideas for another business. Like he was like, maybe I
Mm.
open a tire shop or something like that. And I'm
Huh.
like, yeah, that's totally, and we definitely considered that for a bit as well. I think we ended up landing on this was because like we had, a passion for something like this. And I was actually willing to put in the work to try to figure out like, okay, how can we actually get this going? You really need like an extreme, unrealistic amount of motivation to pull something like
Mm.
this off. Especially if like, it's not really my industry. I
Sure.
haven't I haven't really, I've had like odd jobs in restaurants and stuff like that before. Like, but like honestly, like very brief stints. Like I didn't really understand the industry at a deep level where I felt qualified to open up a cafe.
Yeah.
And I never even run my own business before, and it was like we were breaking new ground every single day,
Mm.
like pursuing this, and it was honestly really scary. And I think I don't know how I was able to overcome it, and just kind of keep moving forward. But I think that is probably, the hardest thing to overcome in taking that next step. It's
Mm.
like, and once you do, it like opens up a whole, like, it's like, space exploration, right? Once you can break that boundary, there's like the world is infinite and you can kind of do whatever you want.
Mm. Yeah,
But
I
yeah, yeah.
love
And
that.
then, and we
Let's
kind
let's
of,
go ahead and take a quick pause here and we'll come back in because I definitely want to hear more.
cool.
Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah Yasmeen Shaikh, and I am speaking today with Mohammed Joyo. And I want to definitely jump you right back to where you left off. So, uh, I'm going to ask you some questions though. So you've decided this is what you're going to do.
Yeah.
And when I say this, uh, tell me about the nature of the business. And then I'm also curious, so if you want to throw that in there, how did you decide on location? Do you live near the business? Is this why you decided on it? Yeah, anything of that sort.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. So we kind of, what it looked like initially was, I looked back at, some of the moments that I felt like I was really, some of my fond moments back in Pakistan.
Hmm.
Spending time with cousins and friends, like late night over chai. It felt like this intimate, cozy experience, or even going to people's houses and, you have dinner, but then everyone kind of settles in and relaxes and has
Hmm.
a cup of chai.
Yeah.
And also seeing kind of, this such a culturally significant drink for us kind of being, I don't want to say appropriated, but like, just being not what it
Yeah.
wasn't authentic,
And the
basically.
essence of
And
it, the
yes,
intention, and not just in the flavors and the
right,
naming, as we know too often how it
right.
gets butchered. But yeah, just sort of
Yeah.
why it is even so special to those of us that come from cultures that
Yeah.
appreciate this.
And my mom would kind of go to like, coffee shops
Yeah.
or like Starbucks, back then, we don't go to
Yes,
Starbucks
yes,
anymore,
yes.
but um and order like she got excited. She's like, "Oh my God, they have chai."
Sure.
And I was like, I mean, no, that's not what you expect, but she got it anyways, and then she was
Yeah.
disappointed. And so I think we wanted to kind of bring that experience to the Bay, and maybe even beyond. But for now, just kind of hyper focus on where we are,
Mm,
and wanted to kind of reclaim the narrative and tell our own
yeah.
story around chai and what it is and what it means to us. And I believe that if people could try the real chai, they would, go nuts for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, I think they have so far. Um,
Beautiful. When did you open your doors?
we had it, I think our soft opening on January 6th, I believe, or
Okay.
January 6th or something like that of
Okay.
2020, 2024.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
2025, right? Yeah.
Yes, I know, right? And you are located in Berkeley.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
And how did you decide then on that location? Was it about looking for places and something opened up here? Was it very like, we want to be in Berkeley?
yeah. I mean, I lived in Oakland at that time. So we were looking for something nearby. I think, just being close and doing something new, it just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we were looking in Oakland initially, and then we expanded our search also to Berkeley and just like, um, you know, it's hard to find the right thing. Um, but after some time, we came across a location in Berkeley, and we'd seen a few other locations, and we just like really really liked it, and it
Mm.
just kind of we could see it, and I mean the great thing was like it was already all set up and ready to go.
Oh,
It had all the
perfect.
equipment for being a coffee shop. It was had the furniture and laid out, and it was done pretty well. And so we kind
Perfect.
of took this space and just kind of put our like took down like anything that we didn't like, took down the old branding and kind of made it our own.
Yeah.
And the result of that is we were able to like go from signing the lease to being open in like a month.
Wow, that is
which is like,
phenomenal.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, I think that that space just kind of we were just at the right place at the right time, and I definitely think we got really lucky with that, and it worked out really well. And especially as we feel like now that we've like very quickly outgrown that place as well.
Yeah.
Um, so now like now like that question is even more prevalent is like,
Okay.
how do you kind of think about these locations, especially as you go beyond that? What makes sense? Where do you want to go? Like,
Mm,
which next community do you want to be a part of is a big question for us right now.
yeah. Well, it all makes perfect sense. And sometimes too, I have a very different business that I run, but that being in the arts, in dance. And it's sort of like, even when you're succeeding in what you're doing, is a model of growth going to actually diminish the quality of that in one way or the other, whether you're depleting resources, financial or personnel or otherwise, right?
Hmm.
Um, so for all of those reasons, and to be a physical location at that, all the things that come along with it,
Yep.
Berkeley is such a beautifully, in many ways, like a unique. It's a gem, in the Bay Area
Yeah.
for so many reasons, and will you get that if you go to a different city? So I can imagine the things that go through your mind in exploring those possibilities. I'm
Yeah.
curious a little bit about the menu and about how and where you source your ingredients from, even your recipes, so to speak. I saw that. I don't know if this was just a Ramadan special, but the Ruh Hafsa matcha. But anything about just sort of what it is, what's on the menu, and how it came to be.
Yeah. I think I have like I have a philosophy that like, we keep things really simple, but the few things
Mm,
that we do them extremely well.
nice.
And so that means like getting really high quality ingredients and making sure that we spend like a lot of time making sure things are done well and done right. We don't cut corners and we
Mm,
just deliver a great consistent experience every time. Um, I always say like akin to like In and Out or something like that, you know.
yeah,
The menu never changes. It's
yeah.
always the same. It's always consistent. And I mean, it's a testament to how they're doing as a business. And so we just started off with like one kind of, well, I guess two kinds of chai, but in theory, technically it's just one kind of chai. We call it our Karak chai. And then
Hmm.
we make an oat milk version of that as well.
Okay.
Um, so, and I'm lactose intolerant, unfortunately. So, that was a must-have for me.
Sure.
And I think I get so many people that are like, I've never had good oat milk chai. And I'm like, you just have to try this one. And we've converted a few people as well. Like,
Awesome.
so now they're like, I only drink the oat milk chai because it's so good. I'm like, okay, that's great.
There you go.
Um, so, along with that, we have like our espresso drinks and stuff like that. I'm a big coffee head as well. I love drinking
Okay.
coffee. So, we have that. As far as and then we were looking into like, getting pastries from elsewhere and we just couldn't find pastries that like held up to the quality that we were expecting.
Mm,
And we wanted to do like something unique as well. Like we wanted to still put our flair on these pastries that people know and put our like South Asian flair on it. And so we ended up spinning up our own bakery program.
amazing.
Which has been a lot of work on the
Yeah.
back end. And it would have been a lot easier just to buy pastries from someone, but I think so like worthwhile to kind of build and develop that. And I mean, a lot of people come just for our pastries, which is amazing. I think we have our most iconic is probably the Elaichi bun,
Okay.
which is like a Swedish cardamom bun, and we just kind of made it our own. Um, yeah,
Amazing.
and then
I am so glad we are having this conversation post Ramzan. Can I just put
yeah.
that footnote in there?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's
No,
it's
it
it's
sounds
it
amazing.
it's definitely interesting to run a cafe
I
during Ramadan
bet.
time because,
I
we're like trying to
bet.
launch a new menu and like I can't taste anything and I'm just
Yes.
like
That's
and I'm like
very
trying to
true.
get other people to taste things and yeah, yeah. And then
Ah,
as far as like ingredients, I know you asked about those.
yeah.
Um, we use like I think for us like it's really important. I looked at like okay, what makes chai really good? Why is chai so good in Pakistan? And like
Mm,
it's why is it never good when we make it at home? Or
mm.
and after talking to a bunch of chaiwalas in Pakistan, I think I kind of realized that the tea is the same, the spices are pretty much the same. The only thing that's different is the milk. Um,
Huh.
and and the secret I found is like in the milk. Because I mean,
Wow.
essentially you're drinking flavored milk. That's what chai is.
Yeah.
Um, and so we spent a lot of time testing all kinds of different milk and really just getting like the perfect milk that worked with our chai, and that would give us a similar taste to back home. And so we spent a lot of money on our milk. It's like $10 a gallon.
Okay.
But but it's worth every
Gosh,
penny. And I think, people are really excited about our chai because we spend that, you know.
the quality is in the flavor. Yeah. Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, definitely.
I am so curious. Let's take a quick break. I want to jump into something related, but a little bit of an offshoot. So let's take our next pause here.
Sure.
Welcome back to Heartistry. This is Farah, and I am so enjoying my conversation today with Mohammed Joyo and hearing about Elaichi, which is, so would you call it, do you refer to it as a cafe? How do you categorize? What's your preferred categorization, if you will?
That's a good question. I think cafe kind of sums us up pretty well. I don't like uh I didn't like initially I didn't want to put ourselves in a box by putting like chai in the name.
Huh.
And I wanted it to be kind of a little bit generic so we can kind of explore what we want to do and kind of morph into what the community wants us to be as well.
Yeah.
But I think cafe sums it up pretty well. Like, we offer chai, we offer coffee, we offer matcha too, and pastries. So I think cafe and bakery is what we're trying to
Okay.
brand ourselves as. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, kind of going back a little bit, and you'll see where I'm going with this eventually. But so you mentioned this is, you started this off kind of in the conversation with your father. So I have to like close that loop. Did he stay and how involved is he in it? Yeah, curious about that for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he did stay like postponed going back to work like for a bit
Okay.
and he's been here with us since then and kind of helping us build a like and just kind of being around with whatever we need and whatever it needs and I think it's really funny. We have like a weekly meeting with my parents, like me, my
Yeah.
wife, and my parents, and we
Amazing.
go over like just like the weekly operations and like anything else, any updates, anything we need to work on, like and just like have like a little stand-up meeting.
There
um
you
and
go.
it's really funny. It's like half in English, half in Urdu, half in Sindhi, and
Love it.
so yeah, yeah, my parents are still like very much involved.
Beautiful. And this is now, is this what occupies your time from a professional perspective in its entirety? Are you doing anything else simultaneously?
Yeah, my time is definitely split. I'm still
Okay.
working, and kind of supporting us like that way. Like it's a little bit less pressure on the business, and
Mm,
I can kind of support us through other means and just kind of focus on growing the business. I will say like I think Zainab spends the majority of the time now because she's
okay.
full time
Got it.
on Elaichi, and I'm around for like more strategic and direction and stuff like that, and still like kind of formulating the vision for moving forward.
Right. Well, one of the things, Mohammed, that you shared again, kind of going back to some of the thoughts and reflections that you shared and the questions I put out prior to this conversation. Um, and I do love when I speak to folks who essentially are entrepreneurs, which you are. And there's a reason we start the business. There's sort of the core function, service, product, passion. And then there is the business side of it. And that, depending on what you've done prior to that moment, can come with ease or otherwise. But it's expanding beyond just the this is what I want to do. It's the how it all happens is something that I
Mhm.
think, especially I would say, even from the artist perspective, I'm often for myself acutely aware, as well as when I speak with other artists, especially those who are, younger to me, moving in directions, just coming out of school, essentially the business of being an artist. But I think that aspect in general, running a business, and what you reflected on was how you underestimated how much being a good leader would matter. And talk a little bit about that. You shared a little bit of that sort of awareness that came to you of, wow, I didn't expect this. How did you address it? How do you feel you've evolved since then? What have you had to sort of adapt into to feel like you are indeed in that role as a really positive and good leader?
Yeah. No, definitely. I think, the business side is definitely something that, I think a lot of people really struggle with because a lot of people get into a business because they're passionate about it, and about the product or whatever art or whatever they're creating. And they're not as passionate about, running a business. And I think for a business to be successful, you really have to be passionate about the business side of it. And, for some people, they can evolve into that. And I think I definitely have. But other people, it's really difficult for them to evolve into it. And I think one of the primary things that it's like so hard to kind of, you either like being a leader or you don't. I feel like, it's really hard to be kind of a halfway thing where like, I'll make do with it, Um, and I think that is probably the number one reason, why businesses will succeed or not.
Mm,
And I think, whenever people are looking at startups, for example, or investing, like, it's pretty common that they're investing in the founder and not, whatever the idea is or whatever the company
mm,
is built around.
huh,
And that is definitely like the person behind the project is everything.
yeah.
And being that leader kind of, it trickles down like your personality, your work ethic, your thought process,
Mm,
your creativity, everything about your being kind of trickles down into the business and everyone around
yeah.
you. Um, and so like, if there's some part of you that, you don't like or is
Mm,
not good for the business, you either need to cut that out, like, or the business is going to suffer. Um, and so, you really have to be perfect all the time.
mhm.
You have to go into work with a smile on your face every single day, regardless of what happened, earlier that day, because
Yeah.
if the team sees you upset, then it's gonna impact the rest of the team as well, and they're gonna
Yeah, the
have an off day, and
energy
then
gets shifted.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and if like every day you're coming in and yelling at the team or getting stressed or frustrated, then the team is getting stressed and frustrated. But if you're calm and you come in happy and you're excited all the time and you love talking to people, the team will eventually start doing the same thing. And it's really important to just be on top of it, which is it's really hard. It's hard to ask that of a person to just be 100% all the time. Um, but I think that's why there's like so few companies that really do, or so few businesses that really do kind of um, get elevated to like a whole other level because it just requires someone who's a little bit like just like an unreal human being.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say I'm that, but and I'm definitely still learning how to be that good leader. And it also requires you to kind of, balance two worlds. You want to be kind and friendly and nice to your team and like a fellow human being while also, being the boss and
Yeah.
running a business that has so many people dependent on it. We employ about 16 people right now, and their livelihoods
Mm,
depend on us.
yeah.
So it is a lot of immense responsibility to um, make sure the business succeeds and it doesn't fail.
Mm,
Because it's not just me anymore. It's not just like my thing on the line. If we don't make it, then my whole team can't. They'll have to go somewhere else and find something else, and that's incredibly hard. And it's a
yeah.
heavy responsibility to bear.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not even a balance, it's the constant navigation of, I
Mhm.
was thinking about how you mentioned hospitality. And essentially, if you're putting out that hospitable vibe to your customers, you want to reflect that in-house as well, meaning
Absolutely.
in the staff. And yet the navigation comes between having, accountability on all sides. Therefore,
Mhm.
you're
Mhm.
accountable to treating them with respect and valuing them. And it is a two-way street, right? And that
Mhm.
is the
Yeah.
tricky thing. And I think both expectations are fair. And so to have that heightened awareness around it, I think is something that I just really appreciate you verbalizing that because,
Mhm.
again, we all play a part, employer, employee, customer,
Oh yeah.
even, and so it's how it all flows in those environments.
It's a
um
big ecosystem.
yeah, 100%. I'm curious to know, you mentioned Starbucks earlier, and you know I'm making an assumption, but I'm going to go ahead and go with it, and please by all means correct me if I'm wrong. But um I think that comes, that the reason you mention it the way you did is, I imagine, is that something you're boycotting, actively boycotting, and or also preference,
Yeah.
right?
I think definitely both. I
Right?
haven't been the biggest fan of Starbucks. I mean, I, you know, I'll give them credit. Like they're extremely consistent for what they do. So, like, while I won't go to the Starbucks in the US, if I'm somewhere that doesn't really have good coffee and,
Hmm.
I see a Starbucks, like it is, for me, like back before, like it was like, okay, at least I know what to expect.
True.
And I can get like decent coffee. They'll probably have oat milk. And
True. Yeah. Yeah.
so but
Yeah.
Starbucks is like an interesting thing. I've always been, I'm more of a coffee snob, so I not really something that I prefer to go to, but
Yeah.
I really don't think we'd exist without Starbucks.
Fair. Fair.
They
They
kind of,
definitely started
yeah,
the trend, so to speak. Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason I bring it up, Mohammed, is, with the intentionality, and I certainly am in this category of when and where possible, sometimes easier, sometimes pushing me out of my comfort zone. I'm trying to make a difference where I can and boycott
Mhm.
certain businesses and services and things where I can. And if we were to look at this particular industry of coffee, chai, gathering spaces, tea outside of even chai in the way that we as South Asians and other cultures know it. But point being is that we have seen, and again, I think it's somewhat, it's definitely specific to locale as far as Bay Area, California, however you want to, however it spans out. But we've seen a reaction to that. We've seen Starbucks closing, and I um,
Mhm.
I've certainly had conversations with friends, noticed others commenting on social media that there has been definitely an increase in also seeing more culturally specific businesses such as yours, such as Yemeni coffee places, Lebanese coffee places, things
Mhm.
like this. And it's really not only expanded the marketplace, it's certainly brought greater awareness of these nuances. And frankly, some of them, if you're going to take whether it's African and or Middle Eastern and looking at coffee specifically where like beans are actually sourced from and things like that. I'm just curious to know if these are conversations you're having either with others in your industry and or amongst those coming in as customers. How we're living through times where we are witnessing a genocide, and how people are showing up and spending their money um, has become an increasingly activated space. And anyway, I'm just curious to know if and how it shows up for you at all.
Yeah, I think you kind of mentioned there's been like a big there's been more and more culturally centered spaces being created. In the coffee world, I think, it's known as the fourth wave of coffee.
Mm,
There's been multiple waves, like the first wave being like instant coffee, second wave being Starbucks, and that kind of,
interesting.
and then third wave being like the specialty coffee shops that you'll see. And then the fourth wave is, it might be fourth or fifth. I might be skipping one, but the fourth wave being kind of more culturally centered coffee spaces,
Yeah.
and kind of, having, coffee that is more presented in a more cultural and way that you can experience how different cultures experience coffee.
Mm,
Um, and so it's definitely a big movement across the US and probably even the rest of the world.
yeah.
Um, and I don't know how much of that is to like the current uh political climate, but it's definitely happening. And I think it speaks to what people are looking for. I think people are looking
Yeah.
for like authenticity. They're looking to be real in a world that they feel like has kind of um forgotten about them, or just has become so cold, I guess, a little bit. And I think we're like these little spaces, and I'll shout out as one of my favorite ones, and another one in Berkeley, Jaffa Coffee Roasters.
Mm,
Um, they're owned by three Palestinian brothers. Uh, Beautiful, beautiful space. There's places like this that are kind of like these shining beacons of light, kind of providing warmth in a cold world.
yeah.
And we're definitely aiming to be part of that as well.
Mm. Thank you. That was just so beautifully said, all of that. So I love that. And using that word authenticity too. We don't think about that when we go into places, and we're living in a world that we're kind of at this really interesting intersection of exactly what you described and also still wanting convenience and access, and
Hmm.
I sometimes have to ask myself, can both coexist? Are we losing that authenticity, that sort of culturally centered, sense of community, all of those things, and still have that click of a button away? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Um, but sometimes it definitely seems to be the at least for me in my decision making power as a consumer, those are the things that I sometimes am like, oh, yes, and it'd be so great to have this show up on my doorstep tomorrow. Or to know, like I go on a road trip
Yeah.
and I know I'm going to do my coffee run here because there's one at every exit. You know what I mean? And so it's we have to figure that out for ourselves, I
Yeah.
suppose. But yeah. Well, Mohammed, needless to say, this conversation has been just such a joy. And I love that that's partly your last name too, from the English perspective. But I would love to actually end with the question
Yeah.
I ask all of my guests. Oh, and I have to shout out too that your personal handle on Instagram, what is it, Mojo?
Yeah, yeah. It's like yeah, most people call me Mojo, so
Yeah, I love that.
yeah, most people just call me Mojo. It's a combination of my first and last name. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I would love to ask you the way I love to close these conversations is a question around this concept of heartistry. So, heartistry is the word heart and artistry put together. And for me, it's really been about speaking with individuals who are bringing a passion, compassion, and commitment to whatever they're doing. And clearly, you have exemplified that in so much that we've talked about today. But what I'm always curious to know from my guests is whether, as I'm speaking about it now, or perhaps when we first reached out to you to invite you to be on the podcast and you saw this word, but what, if anything, it invokes for you? Oh, we might be having some connectivity issues here.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think uh I don't know if I would would call myself an artist. I definitely love being creative, and I definitely love, uh kind of displaying my creativity in different ways. And I like to think that I kind of try to find a balance of you know, creativity and logic to everything that I do. And I think, a lot of it does come from the heart, like in terms of the creativity and what I'm kind of interested in. I kind of just follow um, what my heart says, and I think that that kind of definitely really resonates with me. And I think that's where I'm happiest, at least, is kind of just uh, not putting myself in a box, not telling myself this is what I am, this is what I
Mhm.
can be, this is what I can't be. Um, this is what, I can achieve, and this is what I can't achieve. I think every time someone's told me that, oh, it's not going to work out, or you're not,
Mhm.
it's not, uh, are you sure you want to do this? Like,
Mhm.
why don't you just, buy it instead of making it yourself? Like, I'm like, um, that kind of thinking just doesn't work for me. And I think part of the reason why I took on such a scary thing as starting my own business is because I knew that I knew what I'm capable of. I know that I can achieve anything that I want to if I put my heart and mind to it. And I don't let that hold me back, basically. And if it doesn't work out, great, even better actually, because I learned something in the process.
Mhm. Ah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Mohammed, that has just been, I've so enjoyed hearing more about just all aspects of who you are, obviously about Elaichi. I need to get myself up there and I have zero excuses considering it's not that far. And yet I'm also kind of glad that now I have all this backstory for when I visit.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but congratulations. I mean, being in it for a year already. And I really, you mentioned it's sort of the in and out kind of concept. And fun fact, my husband's mother, she had one of the first very small, and ironically, he does the same. He compares it to In and Out, very, very small Indian restaurants down here on the peninsula, right by Stanford
Ah,
University. And this is back in the day when some of the big names in the South Asian scene of those being educated at Stanford would stop in. And
yeah.
literally, it was like three items on the menu. There was a chicken curry, a beef curry, a vegetarian version, those mini, not tiny, but like small cocktail samosas, which my husband has carried on aspects of that business as sort of a legacy tribute to her.
Mm.
And so simple, like it's like going deep and maintaining that quality. It really resonated with me. So, however, that particular model continues to serve you if and when you expand to other cities, all of the things, just continued success and best wishes to you, your
Thank
family,
you so
for the
much.
business. Really,
Yeah.
it's an awesome to see it all coming together. So,
Yeah.
and thank you for your time today on Heartistry.
Yeah. Thanks for the conversation. I enjoyed it a lot.
Same, same.